What's going on, everybody? It's Chris from Out West with Chris, and as my name would kind of indicate, I live out on the West Coast in California. California is a pretty unique state. It gets a bad rap politically a lot of the times, and you know, I'll leave that up to you guys to discuss. California is huge, and it boasts a ton of outdoor opportunities, including a ton of different fisheries. In California, you have the option to fish hundreds of miles of coastline for salmon, striped bass, surf perch, lingcod, and a variety of other fish. You can go from the coast all the way up to the Sierras and fish lakes at 8,000 feet, 9,000 feet for trout. There are a ton of different trout fishing opportunities in the state of California. You can fish small rivers, streams, high mountain lakes, and you can come down into the foothills and valleys and fish a variety of reservoirs, lakes, and where I'm at now, the California Delta. California has a ton of great black bass fishing, whether it's smallmouth, spotted bass, or largemouth bass. A ton of great fisheries in California, and I'm only starting to scratch the surface on the fisheries I've been exposed to. 3 of the top 10 black bass fisheries are actually in California, with Lake Berryessa, Clear Lake, and the California Delta. The pending world record spotted bass is actually caught in Northern California in a reservoir. And lakes like Clear Lake and Lake Berryessa constantly produce fish over 10 pounds. I haven't fished those 2 spots a lot. I'm planning on fishing them a little bit more. But part of my reason is I live in a community that is part of the California Delta. And if you haven't been to the California Delta, you should probably think about making a trip out here. This is a premier black bass fishery. Besides being a premier fishery for black bass, the California Delta is actually a really great fishery for catfish, bluegill, crappie, striped bass, salmon when the salmon are running, and even sturgeon, and a lot more. There's tons of different fish out here in the California Delta. There's so much that's unique about the California Delta. You can fish thousands of miles of shoreline. Some of that shoreline could be riprap levee walls. Some of it could be natural, kind of like this, where it's natural vegetation out on the edges of the channels. Really slow sloughs and marshy areas, and also rivers essentially with pretty decent current. The one thing that ties the Delta together, and the one thing that really kind of dictates the bite, is the tide. The California Delta is a tidal fishery. If you're looking for a place where you can throw a wide variety of baits, the Delta is it. You can throw just about anything, and at any given time you can catch a pretty good fish. Topwater is, you know, like any place, super fun to fish. Buzz baits work great, whopper ploppers, spooks, just a wide variety of top water lures can catch a pretty good fish. And there's just a ton of good habitat that holds good fish. There's a lot of cover. And, you know, throwing around that cover, dragging a buzz bait or a whopper plopper through those areas is a great spot to start. Frogging is also huge on the California Delta. You know, there are tournaments that are frog-only tournaments. And while this guy isn't huge that hits this frog, I mean, there's nothing that beats a frog blow up. Oh. Frogging in the Delta isn't rocket science. It's the same as it is a lot of places. Lighter colors during the day and darker colors in the evenings and at night. A weedless frog is going to be pretty beneficial for you, though. Another great method of fishing in the California Delta is punching. There are so many mats, and punching here in the Delta, I mean, you got to use 65-pound braid and at least an ounce, ounce and a half, and sometimes 2 ounce tungsten weight just to get through some of these mats. But underneath, you got a good chance of getting a pretty decent fish. As far as bait selection, you know, really you can punch with quite a few different baits. The double wide beavers are really, really popular in the Delta. And as far as colors go, natural colors tend to do good. Darker natural colors when you're punching. And when it's hot out, these fish just go right underneath these mats and they start feeding on the crawdads that are underneath. And you can fish almost all day punching and catch some really good fish. If the punching slows down and some of the reaction bait bite is a little bit slow, you can always throw a stick bait. And that subtle presentation, I almost lost a rod right there. That subtle presentation, you know, catches a ton of fish in the Delta. And basically you're just throwing right at the edges of cover, whether that cover is tules, the mats, if you just throw at the edge of the mats, or clumps of weeds, and you can catch some pretty good fish. You'll catch little fish too, don't get me wrong, but when the bite slows down, when the topwater bite slows down, when that reaction bait bite slows down, sometimes you just got to throw a Senko into these pockets of cover where these fish hold, and it's almost like they cannot resist it. Now your bright colors and that type of stuff, it ain't gonna fly out on the Delta. It's just not. You might get lucky and catch one on a hot pink Senko sometime, or you know, some sort of hot pink trick worm or something, but really you need to go with your natural colors, your greens with red flakes, you know, that type of thing. A little bit darker if the sun is setting and you don't have a good sun angle. To all the way to a total black stick bait at nighttime. And I mean, you can just catch good fish.
Ooh, that's a big fish.
Like this one.
Oh my gosh. This is a big fish. Ooh.
And this one was caught by throwing a stick bait at the edge of that mat right there.
Look at him.
With all that said, the reaction bites are still really good. So your crankbaits, your chatterbaits, your spinner baits catch fish just like this one right here.
Whoa.
And the great thing about the Delta is at any given time, you can hook up with a 7-pound fish, a 10-pound fish, or an 18-pound fish, which is the current Northern California and Delta record.
All right, everybody, here it is. 7-pounder. I am jacked right now. This is awesome.
That's gonna wrap it up for me. California offers a ton of different fishing experiences. If you wanna go for kokanee, lake trout, brown trout, rainbow trout, salmon, striped bass, sturgeon, or the black bass that I fish for on a pretty frequent basis, you have a ton of options. One of those options, and I think it's a must-visit bucket list option, is the California Delta, where when the bite is on fire, you can catch 20, 30 fish a day, and you never know when one of those 20 or 30 is gonna be a 10-pounder or better. Thank you all for watching. I hope I see you guys out on the California Delta sometime in the future. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section down below. Like this video, subscribe, and as always, thanks for getting out west with Chris.